Hi, good evening. My name is Herman Farrell. I'm a professor here in the University of Kentucky Department of Theater and Dance. I teach playwriting and screenwriting, and I also teach theater history as well as dramatic literature courses. And I'm joined here tonight by two recent graduates, maybe a few years beyond recent, who are here to share with us their thoughts about their time studying for a PhD. And so this is an alumni series that we're establishing with this first run, this first recording of alums coming back to share their stories with you, the students of the University of Kentucky Department of Theater and Dance, and also for prospective students who are considering coming here and maybe even going on to graduate study in particular with achieving a PhD. As we go on with this alumni series, we're going to have a variety of different other folks coming back to share with us about their experiences in MFA programs in performance and in dance, and also folks who are studying design in MFA programs. We hope to bring back some students who have gone on to law school, and other folks who are out in the field. And we'll have them joining us over the next couple of months, next couple of years, and we'll create all these recorded videos to share with all of you to give everyone a sense of what the possibilities are as a University of Kentucky Department of Theater and Dance student. So today we are joined by Sarah Fahmy and Abby Schroering. And the way this is going to work is I'll do a brief introduction of the both of them, give you all a sense of who they are and what they've accomplished so far. And then I will go and ask a bunch of questions. The first section of them will be focused on their work in their PhD programs right now. And then we'll go back in time and get a sense from them what it was like to be at UK and how they prepared for their PhD programs. And then after that, we'll have time for a Q&A session, questions from all of you. So first off, Sarah Fammy is a PhD candidate in theater and performance studies, a member of the Child Language Learning Lab in speech and language hearing sciences, and she's pursuing the graduate certificate in cognitive sciences at the University of Colorado, Boulder. Her research investigates how Egyptian women may utilize applied theater to engage with their cultural heritage as they author and embody their own decolonial identities. Sarah's work has been recognized by the Egyptian government, and she recently presented at the Ministry of Expatriate Affairs Egypt Can Conference. She's contributing to education reform through performance-based initiatives nationwide. She's one of the founding members of the Middle Eastern Theater Focus Group at ATHA, the Association for Theater and Higher Education. And she's author of the CU Boulder Middle Eastern North African Women Playwrights Lib Guide, the first digital database of its kind around the world. In the theater and dance department at CU, at Colorado U, Sarah has taught theater and society, Global Theater One, and American Musical Theater, and she's currently the Center for Teaching and Learning Theater Graduate Instructor Lead. She has also served as the CU Boulder coordinator of the 4th annual New Play Festival co-coordinator, yay plays, the assistant production coordinator for the 2018-19 Department of Theater season, and the assistant director of the world premiere production of Hecuba, a new translation by Diane Rayor. She's from Alexandria, Egypt. She went to the British School for high school in Alexandria. And she was at UK from 2013 to 2017. And there she earned a BA in theater, a BA in arts administration, and a minor in studio art, fiber arts. While at our wonderful institution, the Department of Theater and Dance, I think back then it was still partly Department of Theater, but she was a stage manager, production assistant, wardrobe crew chief. I think there's one of and then she's currently at UC Boulder in the PhD program. She's expected to finish the degree in 2021. She already has an MA in theater and performance studies, 2017 to 2019. She worked on that, and the thesis title then was Vocal Empowerment for Young Egyptian Women increasing contributions to sustainable development. So just briefly, welcome, Sarah. Okay. And then I'll read Abby's bio. Abby is a doctoral candidate in the PhD program in theater performance at Columbia University in the city of New York, and a senior leading teaching fellow at the Columbia Center for Teaching and Learning. Her research focuses on performance and ecology and asks, how can the power of performance be mobilized toward the creation of a more just, sustainable, and resilient future for all life on Earth? Her scholarship has been published in ISLE, Interdisciplinary Studies in Literature and Environment, the Journal of Contemporary Drama in English, and Transnational Cinemas. At the Center for Teaching and Learning, she advocates for evidence-based effective teaching practices across the university. Please come back and teach that here. We try that as much as we can. So jokingly, she advocates for evidence-based effective teaching practices across the university. Most recently, she co-designed and facilitated a multi-session learning community considering the whole self in teaching and learning, mental and physical well-being in the classroom, first at Columbia, and then again through the CIRTL, am I saying that right? Or is it, I don't know if you say it out loud, but CIRTL network. She's from Louisville, Kentucky. She was in high school at DuPont Manual, and she also was here at UK Department of Theater and Dance, same time as Sarah, 2013 to 2017. So both of class of 17. She earned a BA in theater and BA in theater and dance, and also a BA in English. While here, she was a stage manager, a playwright, a light designer, production assistant, director, Shelgren Fellow, Gaines Fellow, and as she says, a rabid basketball fan. Sorry about this year, but next year will be better. So that's the introductions. Those are long, but that's important for everybody to hear, to see already how much they've accomplished just since leaving the University of Kentucky. So I just want to begin asking you to share with us and share with our audience a sense of what a PhD actually does and who they are. And I'll begin with you, Abby, if you don't mind. Who are PhDs? What do they do? What's the kind of career and work that's possible for them? And then specifically, what do theater PhDs do?
Great question. There are a lot of answers to that. One thing we'll get into is that Sarah and my programs are very different. So in my program, I'm housed in an English department. So what theater PhDs tend to do is not as much applied theater. So you're not really working on shows unless you're doing that outside of the Columbia context. Instead, you're doing research in the more sort of English literature sense of reading, going to archives, and writing dissertations and articles to be published in academic journals. All kinds of people do it. I came straight through from a very practical theater background at UK. And then, started the PhD right after I graduated. The other two women in my cohort both have a long performance background. So one was a dancer at Sleep No More for a long time before she started her PhD. The other was working in London as an actor for a long time, and then came back to do a PhD. So it's really the whole spectrum of people who do theater and theater adjacent things can do a theater PhD, as long as you are passionate about a research question that touches on theater and or performance studies.
Okay, Sarah?
Yeah, echoing a lot of these sentiments, and one thing to mention about PhD students is that you walk this very fine line between being a student and being in classes and taking classes, but also sometimes being in an instructor role or being in a leadership role, and walking that very fine line between, oh, am I treated as a student or am I treated as an academic colleague or as a scholar or as a researcher? And what does that look like both within your university, within your department, but also with students that you interact with university-wide and then at conferences as well? And how do you interact with people beyond your university? People come to PhD programs from very different backgrounds, both from very different theater backgrounds. So some people as I've mentioned, like have like different practical experience, and some people come straight out of undergrad, but some people also come from very different degrees. So some people have, I've met people who come from like telecommunications backgrounds who are getting PhDs in theater, or physics or science, or there's a whole load of different fields that are represented. And something that is really exciting about getting a PhD is that you really have the flexibility to go out beyond the immediate classes that you're taking and really question what other research you're interested in, and delve into a wide variety of research fields that you can kind of carve your own way with. So it's quite exciting in that sense. But yeah, there are people from very different ages, very different backgrounds, and everyone's kind of in it together. And it's like pick your own, choose your own adventure type of program.
Okay. Well, cool. So let's just go on now to speaking more particularly about each of your programs. If you don't mind, just give us a sense of the program overview. What are your teaching responsibilities? What have you been doing in terms of conference presentations? I would be curious to know about the sort of even the relative age and experience of, you've sort of mentioned that, but of your fellow PhDs, and how many of them went straight through and how many have had them taken some time off or gotten other degrees before they've joined the PhD program. And then finally, if you don't mind, describe a typical day in the life. Sarah, do you want to, since you went, we'll go back the other way now. Do you want to take that first?
Yeah, definitely. So the first thing is that my program, so I actually entered as an MA student. So in some departments there are, or in some universities, you enter as a PhD or you apply for the PhD and then you get an MA along the way. In my case, it was you apply for the MA first and then you graduate with the MA and then you reapply for the PhD, which is what I did. So some people in the PhD, currently, like other people in my cohort are like they got their MAs from other universities and then they came to CU. There's a handful of us, so myself and then two other people who continued on from the masters. One of the reasons I decided to stay on with my masters and then apply for the PhD at CU is that my coursework transferred over. Coursework is, for those of you who are not familiar with that term, is the set classes that you have to take, so the requirements that you need to take for your PhD degree. And I decided to stay because my coursework transferred over, and then I was able to, I had more flexibility to take more classes. So I'm pursuing the cognitive sciences certificate and taking classes in psychology and linguistics, and philosophy and speech language hearing sciences, which I probably would not have been able to do if I had to go to a different university and like continue on with more coursework. So that's the first thing. The cohort itself, my university only accepts 2 people per PhD cohort. With my year, it was only just 1 person. So you are looking at the sole cohort member over here. It is a very tight-knit program though, and a very tight-knit department. So the MAs and the PhDs get along, everyone kind of knows the professors, and it's a very tight-knit community and environment as well. So that has been really supportive, both to starting off in the program, but also continuing on. In terms of teaching load, our funding is linked with teaching 2 classes. So we do a 2-2 load, meaning that we teach 2 classes per semester. As a PhD student, I have to create and teach my own classes. So I design the syllabus, I design assignments, I pick what I want. So I've got full flexibility in how I design my own courses, which is exciting yet challenging. And we have to teach 2 different classes per semester. So this semester I'm teaching ancient global classical theater and theater and society. And that's something that these are the gen ed classes, so they're typically 90-person classes, and I teach students from all across campus, and that has been really insightful as well, of like how the university operates. So that's teaching load. I am currently the Center for Teaching and Learning lead, which means that I'm the theater lead of like the graduate instructors. So I get to organize workshops in different listening series and pedagogical workshops for graduate students, both in the theater department and then campus-wide as well. And I've been involved with numerous diversity and inclusion and equity initiatives on campus through these roles as well. I think that is most of the teaching load questions. Did I cover all of those?
Yeah, just a day in the life, just briefly.
Yeah, day in the life. So it kind of depends on what the day in life looks like. So when I was still taking classes, it meant that I was taking classes and then maybe, teaching a class afterwards, and then, spending some parts of my day either grading or some parts of my day kind of working on my own research. But it changes up depending on how many classes you take, but also depending on whether or not you're even taking anything. So right now, like this semester, I'm teaching 2 classes, so Monday through Friday. So that is what I do during my mornings. And then I set about 4 specific hours to work on my dissertation research. So whatever that entails, reading, writing, researching within very specific hours in the day. I've been doing a lot of service on campus. So I was president of the graduate student government, and I've served on a couple of different strategic planning committees. So a day in my life means that I get to go to multiple meetings with the provost and the chancellor and deans and get to work on that. So yeah, that's my typical day in the life. And I live in Boulder, so weekends for me mean that I go hiking. So that's my little exciting thing.
That's great. Okay, Abby, do I need to restate it for you? You know what you need to tell us. Go ahead.
I think I remember. So the structure of the program at Columbia, you have 6 guaranteed years of funding. And like Sarah, the funding is tied to teaching responsibilities, but you don't teach the first year, and then you can pick either your 5th or 6th year to not teach. And that's a fellowship year to finish your dissertation or to make a lot of progress on your dissertation. We take classes for the first 2 years. Classes are all seminars in an English department. So prepare for a lot of reading and then a lot of writing at the end of the semester. Each seminar has a usually 15 to 20 page seminar paper attached to it where you sort of synthesize the research that you've been reading all semester. So one thing to consider if you want to do a doctoral program. We also have to get an MA along the way, or it's the Columbia, and this is another thing to look into, is if you want to get your MA somewhere and then your PhD somewhere else, make sure that, like Sarah did, whatever PhD program you go into accepts your MA coursework, because at Columbia they don't. So even if you already have a master's coming in, you have to sort of start over and get another one at the end of the first year, write a master's thesis. And then Columbia also has a degree in the middle called an MPhil, a Master of Philosophy, which I think is more common in Europe. I had not heard of it before I got here, but you get that at the end of the 3rd year after sitting oral exams where you sort of, it's different at every institution. Sarah, I don't know if you have orals or comps or anything like that, but you sort of write a list, you get a committee, you write several lists of texts, books, plays, etc., scholarship that you're going to read. At Columbia, it's usually around 200. You read them for a year, and then you sit an exam in front of your committee, and they ask you questions about it, and you answer them. And if you do well enough, then you get the MPhil. That year is also the year that we start acting as instructor of record in the Columbia Core. And again, since it's English department, we're teaching first year writing, sort of college composition, basic class, but at Columbia you get, you can teach in themes, and so there's a performing arts theme, and that's what I teach in. And there are a couple of other things that we have the option of teaching along the way, but mostly it's university writing every semester except for your fellowship year. And then, yeah, years 4 through 6, you are just teaching and writing your dissertation and whatever extracurriculars you are involved in. My extracurriculars are mostly at the Center for Teaching and Learning, which sounds very similar to Sarah's Center for Teaching and Learning. senior lead teaching fellow, designing pedagogical programming, learning communities, advocating for evidence-based teaching practices, which we get a lot of practice with, teaching university writing. Writing is a hard skill to teach. So that's the structure of the program. Oh, I don't think we talked about conferences. Sarah and I ran into each other for the first time at both of our first conference, which we've both stayed involved with. But basically the idea is that, Sarah, I'd actually be interested to see what your professors have to say about this. My professors told me you should try to go to at least one conference by like your second or third year in the program. And then after that, go to one or two a year, basically until you have a job that you want. And conferences are, my impression is primarily networking opportunities where you meet other people that are doing PhDs, but also not necessarily PhDs, ATHA and some of the other conferences. It's theater educators, theater practitioners, university adjacent theater people that come, and you can be in a working group. Sarah and I are both in working groups. Sarah and I were actually in the same working group at a different conference, coincidentally, a couple of years ago, where we designed a scavenger hunt through the Washington, D.C. Botanical Gardens, which was fun. But yeah, so you're in a working group, you meet the people, you work with the people in the working group, and you present something, usually a piece of your own scholarship or something that you've worked on with the group.
Sarah, let's come back to you on the conference issue. And if you could also just explain a little bit more to students who don't understand what goes on in a conference and what these umbrella organizations are, that would be helpful as well.
Yeah, definitely. So we're also really encouraged to go to conferences. It's pushed like from the very first like meeting that we have. We're encouraged to go to as many conferences as we want to, and it's what's great about conferences is, as Abby was mentioning, it's a great networking opportunity, but it's also a great opportunity to get to meet people who are doing top tier research that aren't necessarily in your immediate like university. My department is great, but there is no way that we can represent all research fields and all research aspects in my immediate unit and in my immediate department. And so going to conferences, it's a great opportunity to kind of see what's out there and what universities are represented and what people are talking about. Because when you're writing, when you're publishing and when you're working on your research as in a PhD program, you want to be in conversation with what is happening in the immediate moment and what are people who are working towards like different degrees, what is their research on as well. So that's really exciting. And they just become your different collaborators, and it's people that you build friendships with. And you tend to have, at this point, now that I've been going to conferences for about four years, I've got like my conference friends. So it's people that I see at different conferences throughout the year, and it's a wonderful way to learn about different scholarship and different work that isn't in your particular area. So we're definitely encouraged to do that. We've got, in terms of conference funding, because that is something that is also something to look out for. Our department offers different grants that we can apply to, and the university itself offers different grants. So there's no like guaranteed funding. And when I say funding for conferences, that's usually because conferences require registration costs, but also application fees in order to get into a conference. Anyone can present at a conference, so you don't just have to be a graduate student. There's a lot of, so ATHA, for instance, the Association of Theater and Higher Education, which is the conference that Abby and I went to for the very first time, it's got different working groups and it's got different debut panels. So even as an undergraduate doing research, or even, and when I say research as an undergraduate, I'm talking about like term papers, like different semester. For instance, if you're taking like playwriting, or if you're taking a world theater history class, and the paper that you have to write at the end of that semester, that is something that can be turned into a conference presentation. And that's the way that my department is structured as well, is that everything that we write in our seminar classes, they encourage us to either turn it into a journal publication or into a conference presentation. So either one of these two things. So that's conferences, and there's different types of conferences as well. So another thing is that there's several that are theater-based and theater and performance studies based, both nationally and then internationally as well. And there's a couple of other conferences that you can go to if, like, so for instance, my work is on Middle Eastern, North African work. So I'm also looking at conferences that have to do with African studies, with Middle Eastern studies, with women and gender studies. So not necessarily just theater. So yeah,
Okay.
so that's conferences.
Well, that's great. So just, I think we'll close out the conversation about the PhD program that you're in now. We'll go back in time and talk about your experiences at UK. But so my last question is also a big question. A couple things. One, since we've been sort of talking about dissertations, if you would share with us what your topic is, how you came about to choose it, what was the preliminary research involved, and where you are in terms of its progress, and explain to everybody the whole process of a dissertation, and as a sort of the final major step after the teaching and especially after all the courses. So if you could just share with everybody your thoughts on what that experience has been like and what you're anticipating going forward. And then also just the last big question about what you're hoping to be doing with your PhD as you go out into the world. So, and we'll continue on from there. But Abby, you want to jump in on that big old question?
Sure. So dissertations, the exact timing and the exact format is going to be a little bit different in every program. So something to ask about while you're looking for schools. In my program, you write a prospectus, which is basically a proposal, usually 10 or 15 pages of what do I basically think I want my dissertation to be about, and what sort of scholarly conversations do I want it to touch on or intervene in. That comes right after a comprehensive exam. So usually you finish orals and then like 2 weeks later, they ask you to have a draft of your prospectus. You workshop that for the summer, half the summer, and then just start writing chapters. The standard dissertation format, as I understand it, is usually 4 chapters, which are somewhere around 40 or 50 pages, plus an introduction that situates your work in whatever field you're interested in, and then often some kind of epilogue. That's not a hard and fast rule, but that's sort of what you do if you don't have any creative ideas about what to do for a dissertation structurally. Mine is about performance and ecology. The very working title is Cultivating Collectives, Performance and Ecology for the Anthropocene. And like we said in the beginning, just looking at a bunch of different forms of theater and performance and trying to figure out how they sort of shift the values of both the people working on the productions and the spectators toward sort of ecological, sustainable values. And so each chapter is a different kind of performance. I've finished one that's about mainstream contemporary performance, so things on Broadway and the West End. And I just last week sent off a draft of my second chapter, which is about sort of labor, United Farm Workers, union strike, etc., guerrilla theater, so to speak. So those are the 2 that I'm sure that I'm writing. And then there will be a couple more over the next year and a half or so. And in terms of what comes next, there are lots of options. You can go on to the academic job market and try to get a tenure track job. The placement coordinator in my program has said that you should expect to have sort of precarious academic jobs for at least 5 years after the PhD before getting a tenure track job. So that's things like adjuncting, mostly visiting professorships, postdocs, that kind of thing. I am not especially interested in that. I will go on that job market, but I'm also going on the educational development job market, which is sort of the Center for Teaching and Learning track, to end up working sort of doing what Sarah and I are both doing now at Centers for Teaching and Learning, but as a salaried position instead of a graduate student fellow. That's my main plan. But there are lots of things that you can do with a PhD besides being a professor, although that is an option.
Sarah?
Yeah, so we have a very similar structure in terms of the comprehensive exam and then the prospectus. And then this is where it gets really cool because Abby and I are doing very, very different, not only very different research, but also it's structured very differently, which is really exciting that you get to hear about the very different things that you can do with a PhD in theater. So we take we take our comps in usually in the first semester of your third year, and then after that, and so the comprehensive exam, it's usually you have to write like 3 different essays after reading like 90 different texts. And then the 3 different essays are about like 5,000 words each, and you've got like 10 days to write these, and it's very specific to like your own research, and then you get tested on that. So that's your written exam, then your oral exam, and then your prospectus, as Abby was describing for my department as well, is 15 to 20 pages where you basically stay like, why are you doing this? What is the need for this? How does it fit into the larger conversation of academia? And what are we adding that's novel? And then that is defended against or with like my full dissertation committee. So full dissertation committee for me means 2 internal professors from my own department, and then 3 internal professors from my department, so my advisor and then 2 others, and then 2 external faculty members. External faculty members can be from different universities, they can be from different departments. So I've got a whole load of different professors from different fields on my committee. And you get to pick your own committee for that. My dissertation, and so then after that, you've got about a year and a half to write your dissertation in my department. Since I finished my coursework here, I only have 3 more years of funding, which means that I took my comps and my prospectus last semester, so in the fall of 2020, and I will be conducting my fieldwork and doing my research and hopefully graduating by 2022. So it's a very tight turnaround. But my research comes out of a very, very personal space. Which is really exciting because you want your dissertation research to be something that you really care about, even when the times get hard. Because it's not smooth sailing. A PhD is pretty intense. And you want to be researching something that's really close to your heart and something that will give you joy, even on the toughest of days. Something that you'll be able to go back and look at and really keep you grounded and rooted. So my working title, my very draft working title for my dissertation is Young Egyptian Women Authoring Their Decolonial Identities. My research is interdisciplinary, so it's got a lot of science elements to it as well. I am working in speech and language hearing sciences, and I am looking at how we can use applied theater for young women to kind of investigate like how they engage with different cultural elements around them to author their own identities. So I am creating my own curriculum, applied theater curriculum, that I plan to facilitate with young women in Egypt. So when I say young women, I mean people between the ages of 13 to 19, so teenagers, in Aswan in Egypt, in a southern city in Egypt. And the curriculum that I'm designing is going to be 12 sessions long officially, and then I'm focusing on participatory action research, which means involving the participants of the study in the actual research itself. So these young women are going to be involved in every aspect of designing the program, in authoring different like research questions like throughout the program, and also in the analysis process as well. So they'll be engaged in different aspects of that. My research is interdisciplinary, so I'm going to be recording, I'm recording their voices before and after participating in the program, and I'm conducting speech and language analysis, so doing a lot of transliteration in English and in Arabic, which is a whole other thing that I didn't ever think I would be doing when I first started this degree. But it will be, I'm looking at how the effectiveness of theater and in participating in improvisational techniques and in self-authorship. So that is my plan. I'm planning on conducting that this summer. So hopefully, if COVID allows, I will be there in person. If not, then I will be doing this program online. And then I have to analyze my qualitative and my quantitative data for that. And write it all up and then defend my dissertation. So that, and it will end up being about 5 chapters. So 1 additional chapter to accommodate for the quantitative data analysis as well. But yeah, so that's my research, and something that I guess going into the future, ideally, I would like to work as a faculty position, and I really enjoy teaching, and I really enjoy the research aspect as well, and interacting with students. So that is the plan. I'm going to be pursuing that, looking at the current job market. I'm also going to be looking at different university administrative roles and different. So within like different centers for teaching and learning, and in different positions like pedagogical positions as well at the university. So yeah, that's my plan.
Well, that was great. Thank you both. I feel like that's a PhD and PhDs. But that was quite helpful, I think, for our students who may be considering this. I would just echo this notion of whatever you end up doing, I guess, in the PhD or in any kind of program that you choose, that you'd be passionate about it, that it's something that you want to spend a lot of time digging in and learning about, and giving up a substantial portion of your time and life and commitment. And you only do it if you really want to do it. And so I'm glad to hear you're both doing that. I'm sure we all had no doubt that would be the case, but it's great that you even identified very particular topics that are close to home and things that you care about and that are really worthy of the world learning more about it, but also personally for you working through it in terms of the research and the discoveries that you're making along the way. The only other thing I would share with everybody who's listening in is this notion about teaching at the university level. One thing to note is that there are this thing called terminal degrees. A PhD as well as an MFA are what we call terminal degrees. And those are degrees that are graduate degrees where you can have the opportunity to teach in a university or college setting. Folks who sometimes get what we call an MA, which is a graduate level degree, aren't necessarily always, depending on the program, aren't always eligible to be teaching on the university level. Some are as adjuncts, but it's usually the folks who have got the MFAs. This is in the area of theater, MFAs or PhDs who have that opportunity to teach at the university level. Am I right about that? Have I got that correct? I mean, MAs I know will teach, but it's really, you need to go forward to what they call that terminal degree. So let's just swing around now to a conversation about what it was like for you preparing to go to these wonderful programs. What was your focus in your activities while you were at UK, and how did any of them prepare you for your study and work, maybe even your research and teaching in the PhD programs? Whoever wants to go first at this point.
Sarah, you want to take that one?
Sure, I will. So one thing that was something that I didn't really expect to prepare me for a PhD, that is really one of the biggest things that is my involvement with stage management and my involvement backstage. There's a lot of different skills that we learn in theater in terms of time management, organization, thinking on your feet, thinking under pressure. There is a lot of pressure. There is a lot of pressure that you plan for. There is a lot of pressure that you don't plan for that just kind of hits you in the face. And I will say, being a stage manager and having been a stage manager who worked on multiple productions, so I did straight plays, I did different musicals in the round, proscenium. I worked with the opera department. I also worked on dance shows and different, being able to work in different areas really helped prepare me to be like, okay, I've got X amount of time to get something done, need to communicate in a very specific way, need to be organized. If you're not organized, and if you're just kind of walking into a PhD and like, oh yeah, it'll happen when it happens, it's not going to. So there's a lot of self-discipline that goes into a PhD, and that is something that I'm very grateful that I got when I was at UK. So definitely working backstage and learning how to work with different people and learning how to communicate with different people depending on the situation as well. So that was one thing. I was also in the Fine Arts Living Learning program which was then at Roselle. I know it has since moved. But that was also something that was really important for me because I got to interact with different people, and it was really kind of like my home base as to, well, what is theater? Like, what am I passionate about within like the performing arts world? How do I fit into the different conversation and working with different artists as well? So that was, and then as well, working at the art museum as a gallery assistant. So different experiences that really helped shape me into getting a PhD. And I think one very important plug, and again, this is not one that I was expecting, was I decided to pursue a PhD after I took World Theater with Herman. I emailed Herman about this because it's a very fond memory. And I remember I was sitting at the William T. Young Library super late at night around like 5 a.m. working on my final paper for that class. And that was the moment that it really hit me of like, this is like, I just started crying kind of on my own of like, oh, I love this research so much. And I was looking at like feminist playwrights. So we've really come full circle because and I mentioned that as a thing of pay attention to what you really like, pay attention to what you're really passionate about. What makes you happy? Like, what are different elements of the classes that you're taking that excite you? Because that was one thing for me, and that ended up being the paper that I used for my applications for graduate school. And it's very much in the same area of research that I'm doing now. So that's how UK helped set me up.
Yeah, 100% agree. I was also a stage manager a lot at UK. Also did directing, light design, echoing everything, thinking on your feet, learning how to deal with lots of different kinds of people. Also teaching. If you're teaching well with evidence-based practices, it's probably more like being a director or a stage manager than being like an actor or a performer. And yeah, teaching is the most stage management-like thing that I have done in this program, and it certainly has benefited me a lot. Sarah, you were talking, I don't actually remember the exact moment that I decided that I wanted to do a PhD, but another thing for current undergrads, if you're thinking about doing research-based graduate school, either a master or a PhD, there are lots of places on Kentucky's campus that will help you get into undergraduate research. There's an Office of Undergraduate Research. There's a Chelgren Fellowship that sort of introduces you to the basic methodologies of what do we mean by research in these different fields. And then there's also the Gaines Center, which I think my last year at the Gaines Center for the Humanities, you write a thesis that is kind of like a master's thesis. And similarly to Sarah, yeah, I was just working on that and thinking, this is really nice. I could do this for 6 more years. and so, yeah, so get involved with research and be a stage manager.
Okay. So just for those who have had that kind of, epiphany as you both had, and maybe I want to do this for the rest of my life, then what happens? So let's just talk about really like the nuts and bolts of applications, interviews, if they happen, written statements, GREs. Just get, quickly, if you can just give them a sense of what that, I know, daunting process is like, and for applications. And then we'll talk in a moment. I'll jump in now. Might as well just ask, once you've heard from schools, then what's your process of deciding where to go? But the first part, let's just hear your thoughts about about the prep work for and the application process. Why don't we just begin with Abby, and then we'll go back to Sarah.
Yeah, it varies a little bit program to program. Before you start applying, look around. I think ATHA actually, or ASTR, there are these two acronyms, ATHE and ASTR, that stand for something like Association of Theater Research something. One of them has a list of all of the PhD programs in the United States and abroad, theater and performance studies PhD. So just like click through all of those and see which general kind of program strikes your fancy. If it's more of an applied program or more of a sort of literature program. And then I'm guessing the applications will vary a lot. I sort of knew that I wanted to be in a more English department E type program. And so the most important thing there is definitely the writing sample. So get at least one good, really good writing sample out of a course paper, some kind of independent study, something that you can send off to grad schools and say, hey, look, I have the potential. They don't expect it to be perfect, but I have the potential to figure out how to be really good at this. And, you know, they're very experienced readers and they'll sort of see. And also I have ideas and I know how to make an argument. That's important, something that they're looking for. GRE, I get the sense that that's sort of going the way of the SAT and the ACT. It doesn't really measure the things that you need to be good at to get into graduate school. I know Columbia doesn't really look at the GRE anymore. And then, yeah, I interviewed, I think I applied to 8 programs. I interviewed with 2 and then decided on Columbia. Yeah, there is an interview process. At Columbia, they interview you basically as like a last vetting thing. Like they pretty much decide everything based on the writing sample. And then they just, they only extend you an interview if they're ready to extend you an offer, basically. And then you can only mess it up in the interview if you do something really wrong, which has never happened since I've been here. Sarah, I don't know if your application process was different.
So ours is slightly different, and it's different because we apply for the MA separately and the PhD separately. So for the MA, there's no interview, at least for my department, and this varies. So this isn't like a one size fits all. So some departments will have interviews, some departments will have you come out for like campus visits before you're admitted or after you're admitted, which is what I did. Some departments will do like an extensive interview just for the PhD program. So it kind of varies. So check out these requirements as well. Another thing is that with applications, there's some departments require like a diversity statement. Some require like a cover letter. Some require like a resume versus a CV. So these are 2 very different documents. And sometimes they have very specific questions that they have like through the department level, but then also other requirements through the university level. So just keep an eye out to how many letters of recommendation are needed. Maybe if you're thinking about graduate school now, start thinking of who would you want to put on your list of references. These are people that you want to, like people who you've worked with, usually professors or theater directors that know your work and that can speak well about you if they're asked. This is someone that it's not just about like their title, but rather like how much do they actually know about you. A couple of like pieces of advice that I really took to heart when I was looking at graduate schools are look at what program you really want to go to. It's not just about like the name of the program or like the city of the program or what it is, but like, what are you actually going for? What are the different things? Like, so look up the different faculty that are in that department. Look up the list of graduate students. Something that is really, really unique about when you look at graduate students is that when you look at the research that the different graduate students are doing, you kind of get a sense of who the faculty are and how they might be able to support you. So that is something. Sometimes, like I ended up reaching out to my current faculty advisor. I just sent an email and I was like, hey, I noticed that you are researching young women's vocal empowerment. You're researching applied theater and you're doing work with theater and sustainable development. And I am currently an undergraduate at the University of Kentucky, and I'm really excited about graduate school. Are you free to talk? And luckily she said yes. And and then I had like a list of questions prepared for her, and that was before I had even applied. That is not something that you're required to do, obviously, but that is something that I personally chose to do. And I had emailed a couple of different faculty members at different universities as well, because kind of leaving UK, I knew that I wanted a program that had a supportive kind of family feel to it. And I wanted to make sure that that was kind of an environment that I was going to go into as well. So, and I got really lucky. So I'm grateful for that. Also, keep a list of all the things that you've done right now. Every single time you work on a show, every single time you do some kind of community event, whatever it is that you're doing, write it down in your resume. Start writing down what you're doing right now, because you're gonna be like, oh, I'll put it off till the end. You're going to forget. So that's another thing that I would just encourage you to keep doing, and start keeping tabs of what are you excited about. Reach out to faculty at UK. We've got some great resources, and they're all wonderful to chat with. So, you know, reach out to people and see, like, how did you get to this degree, or how did you do this one thing? Because there are different routes to how you can get to even any one program. So definitely check that out as well.
Well, great. I actually have one follow-up question, because I don't know if we really touched on it. You started to talk about, you know, the different programs that you might favor. But so when you both were in this position of like of looking at programs that you were accepted into, what was involved, and what would you say folks should consider, even now once you're in school and you've seen other folks come through? What are the kind of factors that everybody should think about? And of course, I'll throw out what I think is obviously money, scholarship for it, you know, and you're all talking about funding, if you can, without getting into personal information, but just give us a sense of what that means. Your opportunities for teach, your opportunity for research, the faculty that you'll be working with, what, you know, and other things like the city it's in, and you know, and the community, and a whole bunch of other things. How do you kind of balance all those out? In terms of just making a choice when the time comes for you to make the choice as to which school you're going to go to? What are those factors, and how would you weigh them, if you've got any thoughts on weighing something over something else? Abby, do you mind jumping in with that?
Sure. Yeah. I didn't talk about campus visits. Once you're admitted, I think most people invite you to campus, and it's quite fancy. They'll sort of pay for your transportation, and there's usually some courting hours at some professor's apartment or house or wherever you're going. So yeah, just talk to the graduate students and the faculty members that you would probably be working with. That's honestly 100% of the reason that I chose to come to Columbia. Just like the vibe, you know, like Sarah was saying, like, do you feel like you like these people? They'll support you. You can spend 6 years with them without going crazy, while all of you are super stressed. And yeah, especially talking to graduate students and sort of getting the real intel on how it is to work with the faculty members, because I know that there are programs where faculty members will sort of be on your committee and then ghost you for 4 years and be sort of completely out of contact, and you're just sort of scrambling around trying to get something together, and then you see them again at your defense. That is a thing that happens, and graduate students at these events will tell you if the person that you're thinking about working with is like that, and I would say you should not work with that person or go to that department, because it's so much of what you do that if you don't have support, it's not going to be worth it. Money also comes into play. You're not going to be making a lot of money. Definitely. I don't mind disclosing that I currently make $31,000 a year. And the living wage in Manhattan, according to that MIT calculator, is $45,000 a year. So I live with my partner who has a full-time job, and that's okay. But for lots of people, that's not okay. So keep that in mind with your funding package. And yeah, but it's New York. So if you like living in New York, Columbia is good. There's actually a lot of theater PhD programs in New York, so you have many options.
Sarah?
Yes, to all of that. The person that you pick to be your faculty advisor and your your mentor is really going to be a mentor. It's I spend many hours at my advisor's house right now, very, very close to her, and that's a dynamic that is unique to us, and that's not necessarily something that is shared with like other graduate students as well. So that's also something to keep in mind, is that your relationship with different faculty members is unique to your own experience and what you make out of it and how you want to be involved. Something about faculty advisors when looking, I knew that I was interested in publishing, and I knew that I was interested in teaching, and also in doing kind of applied work, so work in the community and community-based scholarship. And I noticed, so on my advisor's bio on the website, I noticed when her publications were. I noticed when it was listed, like what conferences she had been to. And you kind of get a sense when you email people and you talk to people, are they really as genuinely nice as like all the websites say that they are? Because all the websites are going to say wonderful things about programs, and you really don't get to know that until, as Abby was saying, like you speak to the graduate students. They will not lie to you, or hopefully they won't lie to you. The other thing about funding, this is something that I wish I knew before applying. Look at the full kind of package. So not just what funding am I getting, but also what are you going to be doing for that funding? So for instance, for my same salary, other people in different departments, like at my own university, just have to teach one class. I have to teach two classes. It's very different from department to department. So just get a sense of that. The other thing is look at health insurance. Do they have health insurance? Do they cover dental insurance? What is there graduate housing? How much is that? How accessible is graduate housing? And what is like the cost of living in the city that you're interested in? What does transport look like? These are all important factors that are important to keep in mind, because you will be living in a city for a while. Look at how diverse a city is. And what does that look like? What does that look like both within the department that you want to be involved with, but also university-wide and citywide as well? Because these are all things that will impact your standard of life and your overall experience as well with the city. Of what amenities are you looking for? Are you looking for a big bustling city? Are you interested in being close to an airport, like go see your family every now and then? Are you interested in nature and being outdoors? Like what is it? So keep all these things in mind as well, because you are a well-rounded human, and these things will factor in. Trying to think of what else. Another thing is kind of look at what research amenities exist. Is there a research library? Is it are they open? So there are different tiers of different universities. Abby and I are both at like Research 1 universities. Kentucky's a Research 1 university as well. So that means that research is kind of that you're able to do interdisciplinary research, but you're able to do international research. So the research is really prioritized. So look at that as well. What does that look like? Are there institutes? Are there graduate certificates that you might be interested in pursuing? So these are all things that I wish I knew about, I guess, as well before applying. And yeah, your living wage is abysmal.
Okay. But that's, I think, helpful for again, undergraduates who maybe haven't even thought about this notion of, in a PhD program. I think Abby was already making that point, that there's a duality to it, that you're a student, but you're also not just an employee, but you're a rising member of the faculty. So you're an employee and also a student. So you are going to get paid something to do the work. And like you said, with those benefits of thinking about health insurance and everything else that will come with it. But then, of course, there's all the work that's associated with being a student. Other graduate programs don't necessarily work that way. MFA programs rarely have opportunities for employment as a TA or a teacher. JD program, I went to law school. More often than not, it's not going to be on the table. You're just going there to do your study, but you'll be doing internships and maybe even working during your second and definitely in your third year. Obviously, in medical school, you'll be working for the hospital at some point. So there is that kind of same kind of notion of being an employee and a student at the same time. So each different graduate school you might choose, coming out of UK, you want to think about this notion of being, whether you're going to be an employee or whether you're going to be a student or a little bit of both, and then also just really thinking about what you want. And thinking, and then thinking as an employee who's going to be hired, and what are you going to be your rights, and how are you going to be treated, and then even as a student, what things are going to be available to you. You've all talked about, faculty that are going to be there for you, and those that are going to maybe ghost you and what have you. Resources in terms of just money for if you do field research, if you need to go to an archive across the world or across the street or wherever it is. Sometimes there's a lot of funding for that kind of research, which you want to know about. And some places they'll say, no, sorry, you pay for it, it's on your dime. Going to these conferences, whether or not you'll get that kind of support is a question. But it's all fascinating, and I really appreciate everything that's gone on tonight. This has been informative for me, and I'm sure it'll be informative for many of our students who will be hearing this, as we've jokingly said before we got started, down through the years. So thank you both very much for this part of it. I really appreciate everything. Let me just ask quickly, is there anything that you want to just add on, or do you feel like we've talked it all through, and maybe we just hear what the questions come? Anything you want to just, that you would want to shout out to your UK students?
Yeah, I'll just say UK theater and dance students make excellent PhD students. And so if anyone's thinking about it, I'm happy to sort of talk with them and advise accordingly.
All right.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean, it's a really exciting, it's a really exciting department, and I'm very grateful to, because I don't think that I would be able to survive a PhD program had I not had that kind of solid foundation at UK First to get me started with whatever it is that I wanted to do. So really take advantage of what's at your fingertips, and it is really exciting. And yeah, as Abby mentioned, happy to talk to anyone who is interested in this. And I think that Abby and I are also some of the few people who go straight from undergrad straight into PhD programs as well. So that is kind of a testament to this program as well. So happy to chat with anyone who's interested or wants to know more about anything at all.
Okay. All right. Well, great. Thank you so much. Tony, can we open it up now to questions?
Yes, I'm not. Hello, everybody. There's a question that is, what has been your greatest challenge as a PhD candidate, and how did you overcome it?
I had a very hard time moving to New York. Big time culture shock. Going back to thinking about what city you're going to and what that's going to mean for you personally. I was always sort of one of these people that was like, I like going to New York once a year to see all the shows, but I would hate to live there. It's too crowded and dirty and XYZ. But how did I overcome it? I just started going to the theater a lot. And that sort of makes up for everything. Of course, the last year I've been mostly in my apartment, but that is extenuating circumstances.
I think my biggest challenge, my first, at the very beginning, starting this program, was thinking that it was going to be like UK, and it really wasn't. It's, CU Boulder is a great university, it's a great environment, but it's, as soon as I learned to kind of let go of the idea of like, oh, I'm trying to recreate my UK experience in this totally different city, I was a lot happier with that. I think that another really, really big challenge, and it's something that I continue kind of struggling with today, but paying more attention to it is acknowledging imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome, for those of you who are not familiar with that term, is feeling that you're inadequate or lesser than, or just not worthy of being in a certain position. And the more that I talk about it, the more that I realize that so many different people within academia, scholars, researchers, but especially graduate students, face a lot. And feeling of like, oh, I'm too nervous. I don't know if I'm good enough to be in this program, or, you know, they're using all these tough like academic terms and theory, and I don't know anything about this. And I think as soon as I realized, like, well, I'm here for a reason. I've got something that's unique to me in my own personal experience, and really embracing that kind of helped me overcome a lot of different aspects of that. When you're in a PhD program, there is definitely ageism that comes with any kind of field, but people don't tend to look at you in terms of like, oh, you just came straight out of undergrad or whatever it is. It's, you know, you've got your own presentation of who you are, and what you choose to share with people is what they know about you as well. So yeah, overcoming imposter syndrome or learning how to deal with that has been my biggest challenge.
Another question, this one is for Sarah. You had talked about you were able to design your own curriculum. Can you speak to that a little bit? Is that something unique to Boulder, or is that something that Abby, that you've been able to do as well?
So yeah, so so different departments operate differently. But when I say design my own curriculum so I'm doing this in two different aspects. So I'm doing it for my research, which I'm totally in control of what I do and how I do it and all of that. So that's very specific to my research. But in terms of teaching undergraduate classes, we are given kind of templates of, this is what the instructor that came before you taught. But we're not given we're not given like specific textbooks. We're not given specific assignments or rubrics or exams, or even you need to like, not even like requirements of you need to do like 3 exams for this class, or this many like papers or whatever it is. So when I say I design my own curriculum, I've got that full flexibility of what I want my students to learn about. So that is everything from the plays that they watch and the plays that they read, to the type of projects that they're doing in class, both written and practical, if there's anything that goes into that. So since I'm a graduate part-time instructor, the way that my syllabus is approved is that I write up my syllabus, and then so I get my appointment. I get to know what I'm teaching sometime in like mid-June if we're looking at the fall. Or sometimes it's like May. And then about 2 weeks before the beginning of the semester, I have to submit my syllabus. And then the faculty advisor for each of the different like classes that are taught. So the different areas. So we've got like acting, and then we've got like the theater history classes, and then like the theater and society classes. And so these are like the different categories. They get to look at the syllabus and approve it, and they're like, okay, this is good to go. Or, oh, actually the person who's teaching the other section of this class has 3 exams and you have 0. Maybe can we have like a compromise so they're evened out? So hopefully that answered that question, but happy to take a follow-up. But also, Abby, I don't know if that's the same with you.
Yeah, no, but Columbia is unique in how prescriptive they are about what we teach and what we teach in those classes, which classes we teach and what we teach in the classes. So I basically get handed a syllabus, and I can, change some of the readings here or there, but the assessments and everything are quite standardized and not flexible. I think somewhere in the middle of my and Sarah's programs is standard, like graduate students teach 1 or 2 of the classes, or there are some programs where you will actually never be an instructor of record teaching your own class. You're just a teaching assistant the whole time, which has pros and cons. Instructor of record tends to be better for your CV and making you a more competitive job market candidate. Teaching assistant tends to be less of a workload, and you can maybe get finished with your research faster. So other things to ask about. But yeah, Columbia, not flexible. Boulder sounds very flexible. I think most programs are probably somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, it's exciting to have that kind of like, oh, I've noticed that I want to teach something from a totally different like time period or region or text or whatever, and I can do that, which is really, really great. And the two syllabi that I've designed for both theater and society and global theater are now being presented to the university for the global diversity credit. So I have successfully created very diverse syllabi, which are really exciting. So that's something. And in my department, you only TA when you are master's students, so PhD students are instructors of record. So that's also something that's different.
Okay. The other questions have been answered. You know, it was about the personal selection or the personal reason why you chose Columbia respectively and UC Boulder. So you've already touched on that. So
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll just ask one that's sort of a follow-up to what we were just talking about in terms of the teaching. I think this is a fun question to ask to both of you. What's it like to be now a teacher? What I mean by that is, like, for Tony and I, when we went back into, being teachers, years had passed, from being on one side of the classroom and being the other. You're basically within 4 years of now on the other side of the classroom. What does it feel like to be in a classroom, to be a teacher, to suddenly realize that, yeah, I'm in this position of authority and there are people who ask me questions and all that? If you've got one fun war story to tell us, I'd love to hear it. I'm sure Tony would too, and all of the faculty at DOTD would love to hear it too. Anything, just fun thing that you've enjoyed about being a teacher now.
Oh yeah, talk about imposter syndrome. Well, here's the thing, Sarah, I don't know if this is what you were getting at. Sarah said something like, people only know what you tell them. And so I have been quite sort of discreet about telling people how old that I am.
Yes.
Because yeah, if they find out you're 25 or whatever, and you're supposed to be teaching these classes, some people get a little bit salty. And especially if you're a woman or a woman of color, they can sort of come at you with challenging your authority. Anyway, so I accidentally did not disclose my age too well. And I, last semester, was assigned to a class that you're actually only supposed to teach once you're sort of an advanced instructor for non-traditional students. And at Columbia, that mostly means well, there's a lot of things it means. In my case, it mostly meant people who were in the military for several years and then came back. So for that class, all of them were several years older than me. And yeah, did get quite a bit of pushback from those guys. That's my war story, not to be
as it were. Yeah.
On the nose, yeah, but yeah.
Sarah?
Ageism and sexism in the academy. Oh my. Yes, echoing that. So when I first came to Boulder, and when I was a teaching assistant for the first time, I was actually 21. So I was the same age as a lot of the students that I was TAing for, and it was quite challenging at times. And that's where the stage management comes in. Because you really have to assert your authority, and you have to be kind of neutral, and it's this weird, delicate line of being like friendly, but also stern, but also not too stern, because then that's going to show up on FCQs, which is a whole other thing. FCQs is a whole other thing. I think one of the biggest things is definitely imposter syndrome, in that I've had to teach classes that aren't in my specific research field, because I don't get to choose the classes that I teach. And, I've had to teach like American musical theater and like these world theater history classes and whatnot. And it's, And I think one thing that I didn't realize is that there's a lot of times that I have to teach myself that content maybe like a few days or a few hours before I go in, and suddenly it's like, oh, I have to answer all the questions now. So yeah, mad respect for, for all of my faculty members, and kind of realizing just there's so much that happens behind the scenes. There's so much, just like with setting up like a Canvas page, with making like you know, presentations and work, you know, abide by universal learning design, like design for learning and whatnot, and just it's intense. But I've also noticed that I really enjoy it, and yeah, I really do love it, and each class is different. And just because you've taught something once and it worked does not mean it's going to work with another class. So yeah, constant learning curve, I think.
Well, that's cool. Well, I'm glad it all came around to even that aspect of it. One of the things I've just learned as somebody who wasn't intending to be a teacher is the notion of just becoming better at my field because I teach. The time that I spend digging in to just maybe present material about theater history or dramatic literature, or even about the creative arts and playwriting makes me a better playwright. And it, you know, it really does. And it makes me a better scholar as well. And so there's something to be said for learning by teaching. And I think you've known that for a long time, and that's probably why you're heading down that road. So let me just say that this was really wonderful. I've had such a great evening. It was sunny when we began in my office, and now it's gotten darker here. And I just want to thank the both of you, and I want to thank Tony, our chair of the Department of Theater and Dance, for hosting this for us. And thank you for being a part of our first alumni series. So thank you very, very much.
Thanks very much for having us. It's really good to see you all.
It is a great honor to be here. So thank you so much. And we look forward to hearing from some of you who are interested in graduate schools as well.
We'll find a way to share your information with students who are interested. So thank you both very much.